I'm going to be using those half-step passing tones that we talked about. I'm going to be using the 9, bending off of the 9, slides. I'm going to be using all these slides. Half steps, I'm going to be bending that flat to major third in all these places. Right, I'm going to be doing all kinds of bends. Vibrato, trills, passing, double stops, adding the blue note. All those things, I'm going to throw it all into the soup, if I can remember everything, just to show you how this is going to sound. Maybe I'll even do some tapping and some tap harmonics if I'm feeling randy. We'll give it a try. And everything is going to be basically in A minor. So throw it all into the soup. And I'm not saying throw everything into the soup every time you play, because then you're going to sound like a wanker. You don't want to shoot your load right out of the gate, because where are you going to go from there? So you want to throw these things in there. But I'm going to do it all, or as much of it right now, just to show you how it will sound. But, you know, have some restraint when you're soloing. Make people want more, almost kind of keep them on the edge of their seat. And when you find a little lick that you really like, when you find some magic, because really all you're doing is you're searching for the magic when you're going through this. And notice I'm going to be using these expanded shapes when I do this. When you find a lick that's cool, play with it a little bit. Like turn it around. Maybe if you find like... So I was playing these 3 notes. Bending, then changing it a little bit. So when you find something like that, that's what people really... you want to engage the listeners. That's the whole trick. You want to draw them into your solo, and melody is going to do that. So playing some repeated line, and then play a line off of that line. So you're kind of building off yourself. You want to have your solo wants to have some continuity. Going from, you don't want to go from one thing to something totally unrelated, because then again you're going to sound very fragmented. So you want to build some melody in your solo and not just play streams and streams and streams of notes, because after a while that's going to sound kind of like ranting, and people can't really bite into that and sink their teeth into it. After a while it just sounds like babble. I'm not saying don't play fast as you want, but I'm saying mix in some good melody and some good rhythmic ideas in your soloing. Sometimes you can just stay on one note and play like a phrase, syncopated, and it's cool. So what I did there is I'm just staying on this flat third to C, and I'm playing da 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 da. If you're not sure of playing that, say it. And I'm not playing this. I'm not playing it in like straight 8 notes. That sounds too sterile, too mechanical. Ba-da-ba-ba, real choppy, kind of staccato-y. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-da-da-da. So don't just go from note to 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 note. Stay on a note for a little bit and kind of milk it. Hit a couple, get those bends going. Another really nice bend I like is bending, like I'll bend the root up all the way up though, because if you're going to bend your A, remember your next note isn't until you get your C. So that's 3 fret, minor third. So I like bending minor thirds. The only thing is you got to really go for that bend. You're not just bending a half or even a whole step. You're going up a step and a half. I'm really you're really bending that string. I'm really going for it. And I use 11 gauge strings, sometimes 12. So I have really thick strings. The thicker strings you go, the harder it is to bend them. But I just like the way they feel. And the action on my guitars would set a little higher because I like the notes ringing out a little bit more. So it's a little harder to play, but I like it. I like to kind of work for it a little bit. But going for those minor third bends and 2-step bends, you're bending almost to the point of breaking your string, but they sound really cool. So I'm bending that A all the way up to the C. So I like that bend. That's a really nice bend if you can get it. You gotta really push up there to get it. The other thing I do a lot too is my vibrato. I've worked a long time. Sometimes the vibrato takes you years and years to develop, but it's so important to have a nice, smooth, even vibrato. And see the way I'm massaging that note into the fretboard. I use as many fingers as I can to bend strings and for vibrato, for strength. I'll rarely bend with one finger unless I'm doing like a quarter or half step bend with the first finger. Most of the time I'm using 3 or 4 fingers to bend because I have more strength. 1 finger per fret is nice, and you use all 4 pushing down and get that note up there. Minor third here, bend with 3, never with 1. You're not going to have strength and control, especially if you want to vibrato it. So you see all that little extra tone I can get just by adding those vibratos. So I have a kind of wide vibrato. Worked really hard on that. More vibrato, more coming out of that, massaging the notes in. Now, that took a long time. So vibrato, you got to really work on that. Guys would go, I like Yngwie's vibrato, Yngwie Malmsteen. He's a neoclassical. So his vibrato is amazing. He's really wide, but even. And he bends notes perfectly in pitch. Really, technique-wise, he's stellar. A lot of guys, when they're bending notes, just leaving them flat or sharp. It doesn't sound good. The other thing, some of my students, sometimes when they vibrato, they'll bend the note and then vibrato it. You don't want to do that because it's going to sound out of tune. That's like this. So they'll take a note while it's bent and they'll try to, and that's going to sound out of tune. Or sometimes they try to vibrato a little too fast. And you get that kind of thing, which it's not even and smooth. Now, B.B. King does his vibrato like that, but he kind of developed it and his sound's really good. But I tend to focus more on smoother vibrato where you're bending, and here's your given pitch, and you're vibratoing it the same distance above and below that pitch. Smooth and even. You're not going here and back to here. You're going same distance. And I tend to do it kind of wide because I just like the way that sounds. Everybody's vibrato is different. But listen to guys with really good vibrato like Yngwie or Clapton, Joe Satriani, George Lynch, guy from the 80s, right? Doc, and his vibrato, really, really good. They just hit that note and just sings. I try to set up my amp too, where I vibrato the note, it starts feeding back. Can't do it in here because in the studio I'm not very loud, so you can't really get those overtones. But vibrato is critical. And so spend some time working on your vibrato and also bending in vibrato, which is very hard to do. A lot of guys can't do it well. Remember, when you're bending, get more out of your bends. Really work those notes. You're taking the notes. That's what this segment is about. Taking these notes and doing things with them that sound musical. Doing things with them that are hip and cool and adding these extra notes and colors and flavors and extra intervals, seconds and flat fives and nines and whatnot. And remember, a lot of that sound is coming out of your hands, left and right hand. That's how I get a lot of mine. So, I'm going to now incorporate all of these things we're talking about, or as many as I can remember, and over an A minor 7th to a D kind of jam. And I want you to listen for the vibrato, listen for all the little nuances in the playing. All the changes is A minor 7th to D, and I'm going to stay in A minor pentatonic. Right? So here we go. There's a flat third to major third bend. I like that lick, so I'm going to stay with it for a little bit. There it is again. There's a slide, right? Double stops. Right? There's a nice bend and hold. Now I'm going to play off that 9. Little triplet. More triplets. Right? Bend and vibrato. There's that flat to major third bend. Like that double stop there. Little pedal tone. How about some trills? Here's those slides. I like that. Get that little outside sounding note there. Like that F sharp, that Dorian. Right, here's that Gershwin. All minor pentatonic. How about we go up to the other position? Right, just moving that all the way up. Come in this other expanded box shape, right? And I can go back down. But kind of connect your lines. Now I'm going to play A Dorian over the whole thing, which is G major. So I'm going to play my G major scales, focus on the A notes. That's going to open up the fretboard a little bit. And then on the 9th in an A minor 7 arpeggio. Maybe I'll come down the scale. Maybe some octaves. I really like that A Dorian. G major. Right, so maybe some. So, you see what I was doing there? I was totally wanking it as far as I was doing a lot. And if I'm playing live, I wouldn't be all over the place like that as much. But I wanted to show you just how much you can get out of this minor pentatonic just by adding those few things. Very, very important. Really working the notes. So practice that over the jam CDs that came along with the CD in different keys. And in the next segment, I'm going to show you, I just stayed in one minor pentatonic, but over any minor 7th or minor type chord, you can actually play 3 minor pentatonic scales, just moving them around and get 3 totally different sounds. And then you could play Dorian. In that progression, I could use Dorian, or I could use Aeolian over the A minor 7th, and I could play D major stuff over the D chord if I wanted to. There's so much you can do. So why just stay in A minor pentatonic? It's limiting. You want to get minor pentatonic down and everything that I just showed you, but also be able to use other things, and that's what this DVD is about: getting to that next level. Okay. So I'll see you in the next segment, and we're going to talk about when to use this minor pentatonic and over what, and how you can use it differently. Over different chords. All right, so rock on.